Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's NAMI Tennessee Facebook Live. I am so excited to be here. Obviously, I am going to tell you to join NAMI Tennessee's email list. We have the NAMI at Home series. It comes out once a week. It is incredible. It's curated content about mental health, being stuck at home, the holiday. I mean, it's just really, really cool stuff, and it comes right to your email box. It also reminds you of very cool things like the Facebook Live series. You just go to namitn.org and sign up for that. I also want to tell you about our free virtual NAMIWalks holiday party, which is this Thursday, like 4 days if you're watching live, 3 days if you're watching on Tuesday, 2 days on Wednesday. Actually, I guess it would be tomorrow. Math was never my strong suit. There's a special musical guest, the Wanna Beatles. Up in the description is where the registration link is. It is free, but you do need to register. All right, enough about what is going on at NAMI Tennessee. Let's bring on our ultra cool guest, Jodi. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. I'd love to be on with you.
Oh, that is awesome. We are so glad that you are here. Tell us who you are.
Ooh, it's such a big question, isn't it? Our identity, my whole identity. I could go on and on. Now, well, I've been a psychotherapist for 25 years. I'm a survivor of anxiety. I'm a mom. I'm a partner, and I live in Rochester, New York. And so I'm a YouTuber and author. This is my book. What else do you want to know? Anxiety, I'm So Done With You is a book that came out this summer, and it's for teenagers. And, I wrote it before the pandemic, but we were able to add a lot of things to help people get through this time. And I think, oh my gosh, I just have to get this book in schools because these kids are really, really reeling. And it's a perfect topic for today about this, isn't it?
It really is. So you and I, we've been mental health advocates for a long time, and many people at NAMI have been mental health advocates for a long time. But what we're seeing is, I hate to say, an increased interest in things like anxiety and depression and isolation and hopelessness, all mental health issues, but an increased interest because, with quarantines and things being shut down and not being able to visit friends and family, people are just really struggling because many of their support systems have just evaporated. Is that what you're seeing, Jodi?
Yes, absolutely. It's this paradox. We've lost so much. We have so much clutter because there's so much stress in what's going to happen or what's already happened and all our losses. So there's a lot of clutter, but the paradox is then there's a lot of this empty space. We have time and not those normal things that we used to have to fill it up. So we feel cluttered and heavy and stressed out, yet we have too much space in our schedule in a lot of ways.
It's interesting that you said that. And I'm going to try to unpack it. Remember, Gabe is not a therapist. Jodi is. So Jodi educated, Gabe not so much. But it sounds like what you're saying is that on one hand, we have this incredible amount of free time, so therefore we should be less stressed out. But on the other hand, we have this incredible amount of free time, and it's stressing us out. It's causing anxiety and depression. Is that what you're saying?
A little bit, partly, yes. When we have too much space in our day and in our life and in our brain, all this negative could come into that space. But there is a lot of stress in the world. So when you see what's going on and we have all the losses and all these things, those are actual things going on, contexts of experiences that are really difficult and cause us a lot of stress. So yes, actually the idleness is causing stress, but also what is happening is causing a lot of stress.
Is it, when you say what is happening, is the idleness allowing us to focus more on, I want to say the negativity. I mean, you would think that we have more free time so we could focus on positivity. But in reality, are we wired to sort of focus on the negative? And I'm just sort of going by like my social media stream. people have the same amount of ability to share a positive, uplifting, heartwarming story as they do a look, the whole world is going to hell story. But judging by Gabe Howard's personal social media stream, it's 10-1. Is this that anxiety coming out that way, or is this just people are pessimistic?
Yeah, well, what happens is I love to really understand it in a way that, I don't know, help us not think of ourselves as having all these character flaws, you know? But if you think about it this way, our brain evolved for 2 million years. 2 million years it evolved to be problem solving. So the brain has an incredible ability to problem solve. And right now we have less problems in our immediate context of our home, right? We don't have as much stuff to do, as much stuff to think about. And so our brain is like, we need to solve problems. That's what we're supposed to do, or else you might die if you don't solve problems. And so our brain looks for some problems. And that's where the negativity comes from, is because our brain is looking for ways to keep us safe. So it's got to uncover a problem, because problems are what prevent you from being safe.
It almost sounds like then we're stuck, right? If our brains are hardwired to find problems and we're finding problems, then we're working at capacity. That's perfect, but it's not serving us as people are very miserable.
Yeah.
How do we defeat that circuitry?
Yeah, well, there's a couple ways to understand is that they're unsolvable problems that we're finding, because we're home and we're literally safe. You know, most in the context of our anxiety, we're safe, but we're looking for problems to solve and they're unsolvable. So there's chaos there, and that's where our suffering comes from. So there's that chaos. So it is fixable, because that means we have to, it's fixable. We have hope. We have to give it something to do. It's like a dog. If you don't give your dog something to do, they'll tear up the couches and they'll chew your shoes, right? They want a job. So our brain needs a job. And so you could tell, like in the beginning of the quarantine and when the whole country locked down, people were like cooking different food. They were making different stuff, cleaning out their house. They intuitively knew that they needed projects, because we lost all of the structure of our projects in the world, all the routine and everything. So our brain needs novelty. It needs creativity. It needs purpose. These are something that we have to, our routine used to provide for us, and now it doesn't. So we have to provide it, or our brain would be like, okay, we might be in danger. We got to find a problem.
I'm still hung up on this idea that our brains are hardwired to find problems. I'm a very pessimistic person. I know this about myself. I'm middle-aged. It's probably not going anywhere, but I've learned a lot of coping skills. Like if you're just constantly being negative, people don't want to be around you. So it's self-serving then in the real world for me to keep that to myself. Maybe don't tell my wife and my friends everything they're doing wrong, or well, they'll stop coming over to Gabe's. But I also understand this idea of, well, that's the way my brain is working, but I don't want it to work that way, but it's wired to work that way. I'm still struggling with this notion of how do we take something that is, in theory, working correctly and rework it?
Well, you give it something to do that's positive. So problem solving, the word problem has a lot of negative connotations, obviously, but problem solving is like decision making. It's being creative. It's having a project. It's learning something new, right? All of those things could suffice for giving our brain something to do and something to charge it up. What's happening is it's depleting its charge. Like we're not charged up. We're just feeling like, it makes us really unmotivated, that isolation. So we're feeling like sluggish. We don't want to do anything. This is from not doing anything. But if you think about it as our brain's looking for a problem to solve, but think about it this way, like our brain's looking for solutions to have, right? Solutions that it wants to be part of something. It wants to do something. It wants to create something.
What do you suggest? See, in before COVID and before all of this happened, I would literally tell people you need to get out of your house. I remember Gabe a year ago at this time saying to people, look, the problem is you're all up in your head. This is is the language that I use in the support groups that I facilitate. Problem is, you're all up in your head. You need to get out of your head. You need to go volunteer, join a group, take a cooking class, join a walking group. Join a gaming club. There's so many free or low cost clubs, groups. Join Kiwanis. I mean, just whatever. Get out, be of service, be useful, get that helper's high, and probably make some friends along the way. Now I got nothing. I want to tell people to like do that on Zoom, but I'm having trouble keeping a straight face as we're entering month 10 of, you can see your family on Zoom. Like, I miss my grandmother's hugs. So how do we accept second best, and what are some examples of some things that we can do with the with the quarantine and the pandemic?
Yes. So we could look at all the limits. We could look at what we're missing, and we could look at all of the variety in what we can do. And when we look at all the things that we can't do, that feeling of powerlessness comes online really strongly. So there's where our anxiety comes from, right? So we think of all the restrictions, and then you protest, because humans, if they feel oppressed by anything, they're going to protest. So that protest is what you're seeing on your social media feed, is people protesting all those limits that they have. And that keeps them in the chaos and the negative and in that victimhood. And so if you look, actually, there is a variety of things that we are able to do. We're always restricted. Humans are always restricted. We've always been restricted. I can't run 100 miles in an hour. But you work around it. And that gives our brain actually something to do. It working around something is problem solving. So actually finding something that will work to charge your brain up and connect with other people is what we're tasked with right now. That is the problem that we're solving. And yes, we don't, Zoom is not ideal for all the time. Of course, here we are now using it, but it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. And so if we protest that, I don't want to be on another Zoom, then we're suffering from that.
I like the idea of this. We already can't run 100 miles. And the first thing that I thought about is, but we can drive 100 miles. And you're right, that was the solution. So we all sat around and we're like, we got to get 100 miles away. How do we do it? And we invented, trains. And then trains were too expensive for the average person. And then, buses and cars. And it's like throughout history, we've been met with massive challenges. How do we get on the other side of that mountain? We're gonna tunnel through it. In New York City, it was like, we have too many people, but we have underground space we're not using. And I don't know if you ever watched a documentary on building that subway, but what an incredible undertaking. So I like that. That feels very empowering to me. But
we're very adaptable.
We're
very adaptable, but we don't trust it. Like, our anxiety makes us like not trust ourselves at all. So we feel powerless from the context. Then we have anxiety. We don't trust ourselves. So then we feel like we're not adaptable and we can't handle it. But humans are highly adaptable.
I love that message, but I still, once again, my brain starts working, but do we need to? We needed to get on the other side of the mountain. We needed to move to 100 miles. I think that many of us, myself included, I'm speaking purely from experience, I think we're saying to ourselves, well, we don't have to get used to this. It's going to solve itself any minute now. And I know that is contributing to our anxiety, because if we all would have started trying to adapt 10 months ago, we would have adapted. But what do you have to say to help the people that are just like, but is this necessary? I mean, is this work worth doing?
I guess the question is, how do you feel? Do you feel okay? And if the answer is no, I don't feel okay, then yes, it's necessary. It's necessary not to stay there, because you don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay in that suffering. So the people who in the beginning or at any time started new projects and started new things in their life and have something that gives them a purpose, or are learning something new or created something, they're doing better right now because they did that. So the message is the same: get out of your head, right? Get out of that negative spiral of your head and take some kind of action. That is how we calm anxiety, is we take action. And so we could do that within the limits that we have. there is a lot of things that we can do.
Step one is always the hardest. It can seem so overwhelming. We're stuck in the house. We've been, for many of us, we've been looking at this very negatively for 10 months. And maybe we've dipped our toe in the water of trying to be optimistic, but the other pessimistic people have beat us down. And I'm one of the people who have probably beat other people down, like, oh, this is ridiculous. I don't care. I'm trying. I'm not anti-science. I don't want anybody to hear that message. It's just, I'm a very big extrovert. I really like to go outside.
Yeah.
So I know that getting started is the hardest part. What is a good step one for the average person watching this show that is like, okay, I like Jodi's method better than Gabe. Jodi represents power and expertise and optimism and moving forward. And my way represents, or Gabe's way represents, solitude, isolation, hopelessness, and complaining. I want to do it Jodi's way. Now, what is Jodi's step one? Because they want to copy you.
Yeah, that's great. So one of my latest videos on YouTube actually is talking about this, is the first step in any time you're going through difficulty. And it came to me as if you were saying that, like, but I'm negative, like I don't have the stuff I want. Compassion, self-compassion, like understanding what you're feeling right now is an absolute regular human emotion given the context that we're in. A lot of people are experiencing such suffering right now and such confusion and unmotivation and isolation and sadness and anxiety and powerlessness, and they think it's a character flaw. They think they're not handling this right. These are regular human responses to what we're going through. And so you can have a lot of compassion for yourself, and I totally get it. Now people don't even understand compassion. They don't know
Right.
They don't get it. This is it. This is all it is. Anything you feel. Anything that you feel, you just say, I get it. I understand why I feel that way. It's the opposite of judging it. Judging. When you judge something, you attach to it, you put all this other meaning around it, it exponentially makes it worse. When you have compassion for whatever you're feeling, it shrinks it. It makes it's acceptable. It makes you human. You're not pathological any longer. And I think it will be our saving grace. So first step, have total compassion for what you're going through. Stop thinking that it's you and you're the only one and you're not handling things okay. We suffer even if we're handling things okay. We're sad even if we're handling things okay, because we're human beings first and foremost.
I do think that a lot of people are judging themselves. We think that we should be stronger, better. It reminds me of that whole I have to be better. I have to be the best. And I, on one hand, I'm a competitive person, I sort of understand that mentality. There's nothing wrong with trying to improve. I am in a competition with Gabe. I want to be better next time than I was this time. And there's pro and cons to that, right? Like anything. If I said, oh, I'm fine, I don't need to practice, well, that would be bad. But if I can never enjoy my success or accept that I have achieved something, well, then I'm just going to be anxious and miserable. In the case of the pandemic of COVID and of how people feel that's causing anxiety, how do they balance that anxiety is normal, but it feels awful?
Yes. So that is the biggest message that I give. It's like, it's absolutely understandable to feel anxious, but we don't want to leave you there. You don't have to stay there. You can get yourself better. Just because it's understandable and it's a regular human response to our context doesn't mean you have to stay there. There's still ways to then think about it differently and help walk yourself out of it. Anxiety is highly treatable.
So it's interesting. So anxiety is highly treatable. For many people, this is the first time that they've ever had any significant mental health issues. I on one hand, the silver lining, if you were, to the pandemic is that more people are paying attention to and understanding mental health issues in a way that they never had before. Unfortunately, the downside is that they're paying attention to it and understanding it because they're suffering from it. I am surprised at the number of people that I talk to who are experiencing anxiety or depression or mental health issues that are completely unaware of what the treatment is. Can you tell us the treatment for anxiety? I mean, like in a nutshell.
My own method. I have my own 6 steps actually, but the first step is understanding it biologically. Really understanding what's going on, because anxiety is scary because there's mystery, and that helps anxiety keep its power over you, because you're like, why is this happening? What's going on? Why is this happening to me now? What's wrong with me? All of those non-compassionate things, let me add, really give it that air of it's in control and it could come anytime and get you, and it's chaos and you have no power. That's the message when you don't understand anxiety. So the first thing I do with people, like in all my books, I have several books, but this is my latest. Listen, parents, educators, adults, it's written for teenagers, but it is for every age. You could read it. People are really loving this. So understand it biologically is first. The second step is learn the lies that it tells. So understand that anxiety is a liar, just like your book cover, just like your book title. It's so mean. It's the biggest bully ever.
Right.
Yeah. And the third step is cultivating your control, like finding your own personal power, finding your own sovereign power and building that trust in yourself. And then number 5 is for self-forgiveness. That's really looking at that compassion piece and beginning to trust yourself, because a lot of people think they could cure anxiety and still not like themselves. No, you can't not like yourself and be anxiety free. You have to make peace with yourself. So that's step 4.
5.
Yeah, step 4. Step 5 is practice affirmations. So changing those beliefs. So strategic affirmations that change your belief that keeps you stuck and keeps you anxious. And then the 6th one, obviously, is practice the daily rituals for emotional wellness, like the things that we know are important. We know what they are, eating well, sleeping well, taking care of ourselves, those kind of things. That's number 6.
Jodi, when people talk to you about anxiety, many people just don't have, I would love to say that everybody watching this knows what anxiety is, know how it feels, and just says, I need help with anxiety. But as we've learned, many people don't realize that they're experiencing anxiety at all. They don't realize that they're isolated. They don't realize that they're experiencing hopelessness. It's sort of insidious that way, right? They know that something is, I'm not even going to say they know that something is wrong. They know that they're not feeling their best, but they don't have the words. What are some descriptions that you've heard for people describing anxiety who are totally unaware that that's what they're describing?
Resistance, lack of motivation, irritability, anger often has anxiety behind it, feeling out of control or having control issues. Those kind of, a lot of PTSD, they're really describing anxiety symptoms. Of course, they have had trauma as well, but the anxiety is really the problem that is making them suffer the most right now. Overwhelm, people use that word instead. Stress. Stress is a big one. Toxic relationships. I mean, we call anxiety a million different things. And that's why it's so difficult, because it's like, is it me? Like, that's why it's so hard to find treatment for anxiety. People wait 3 to 10 years before they get treatment for anxiety.
Oh, wow.
Because they don't know if they have it. They don't know if it's like, is this like a mental illness or is this regular anxiety? It doesn't matter. If you're suffering, go get some help, because you don't have to stay suffering, but they wait so long saying like, maybe this is normal worries. Well, yes, we have worries. We're human, so of course we have worries. But if it gets to the level that you're suffering and it's interrupting your life and it's affecting your decisions and those kind of things, then you could definitely get help to live happier, freer, calmer, easier, not miss all those opportunities that anxiety makes us miss.
That's an interesting thing that you say, that anxiety causes us missed opportunities. I know that one of the ways that I've always described anxiety is like, you ever have that butterfly in your stomach, but the butterflies aren't just like, okay, I'm a little nervous before my presentation, but you go on and you give the presentation and you kill it, right? It's the butterflies are so bad, you run. You run home, you refuse to go, you quit the job, you don't take the job, in very extreme cases, it can lead to you, quitting the job or even physical symptoms, like vomiting, etc. But stomach aches and butterflies that are impactful, is that anxiety?
Yeah. So, well, how I define it, I have my very own definition because I think it's really helpful to understand what we're talking about because everyone thinks of this word anxiety and would describe it as something different. And a lot of people are like, I don't really even know what it is. But I describe anxiety as a leftover fear response when you're not in physical danger. So there's nothing good about it. A lot of people are like, some anxiety is good. Yeah, the fear response is amazing. It's amazing that our body does that. We have it if we needed it, if we were ever in a situation. 98% of the time, our sympathetic nervous system goes off when we don't need it, when we're not in actual danger. And it could go away. Like that adrenaline could come, and when you realize you're safe, it goes away. But anxiety is that leftover symptoms of the adrenaline and what it does to your mind, what it does to your body in all the ways when you're not in physical danger, but it perpetuates as if you were.
And then once that happens, so I've noticed it. I'm like, okay, there's no danger. I've looked around. I'm safe in my house. I have that fear response. I can tell that I'm afraid of something. There's nothing going on. So I want to do something about this. And I imagine a lot of people are going stir crazy or having cabin fever, or, there's just so many words to, I haven't left my house in any meaningful way in 10 months. Many of us have been to the grocery store or maybe to visit like very close friends in our bubble, or maybe we've even gone to eat on the patio, but we haven't been to a sporting event, a concert. We haven't been to a holiday party. None of this has really happened for most of us. What's our step one to calm that stir crazy down when, hey, go to a concert is not on the list?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that are on the list. I think that's what's important to remember. We could really focus on all the things we can't do. And that's what cabin fever does. We see our limits. We see our prison. Instead of seeing all the variety of things in our house or out in nature, maybe if you're near nature, that you can do, that you can make some choices still. Like your personal agency is not eliminated, even if you're at home. There are many unlimited amount of things that you could do there. And so it's about, we could try to get those negative thoughts out, or we could get out of our mind, like you always tell people to get out of your mind and do something. So taking some kind of action really restores that sense of agency. Feeling trapped takes away our agency. It's like anxiety has all the power. We're powerless. And so doing something actually tells the brain, it tells the body, it builds the confidence, it tells you that you're in control again, and the adrenaline goes down.
This is probably a very weird question, but how do people know when they've won? So you have anxiety, you're doing something about the anxiety, you're seeking treatment. How do they know when they're there? Like, when can they say, hey, everybody, I beat anxiety? What does that look like?
You're not thinking about it anymore. It's very, very exciting. What happens with anxiety when I help people with anxiety, I have online programs, I have my books, I work with people one-on-one. And when I'm helping people get rid of their anxiety, they have their, become episodes, because lack of a better term, experiences of higher bouts of anxiety. They have them less often, shorter in duration, and less intensity. And so right away, maybe it's 95% instead of 100%. And then it goes down gradually. So gradually they get further and further apart, less intensity and shorter in duration, until it's like weeks and weeks or months and months and nothing comes. And that's how you know that in your living, you forget even that you are thinking about it. When you have anxiety every day, it's like, how do I feel today? Am I okay? And like, what does it feel like? My arm, you're so hyper focused on everything. When you're happy, you're not thinking about how you feel. You're just doing stuff in life. Like, you're busy living. You're not thinking about and assessing your feelings all the time.
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, Jodi, we're at the Q&A portion of the day. Are you excited? We've got some.
I love Q&A.
All right, so here's how this works, everybody. Drop your questions in that. We've already got some questions lined up, but drop your questions in the comments, and we will get to as many of them as we can. I want to tell everybody about the free virtual NAMIWalks holiday party on December 17th. Special musical guests, the Wanna Beatles, are going to be there, and a special visit by Santa. Registration link is in the description. Just click on it. It's 100% free. We just need people to register so that we can tell you where to go. All right, Jodi, are you ready for the first question?
Yep.
I like to be, how do you suggest helping young children 4 to 6 with anxiety, specifically when there was no sign of anxiety pre-COVID?
Children take their cue from you. So you have to really do your own work here and really settle your own anxiety, and then you can reassure them. Really, they're learning anxiety and worries from the people around them. And it's understandable, of course. We are all feeling it. And so you really want to ground in. If they believe that you believe that it's going to be okay, then they will believe everything's going to be okay.
That is awesome. Thank you, Carrie Carlson, for that question. I just have a quick follow-up question, though. So what about, she said like young children 4 to 6. I completely agree with that. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, and whenever she falls down, we clap. And she never screams or yells or complains. She's just like, face plants. We're like, yeah! We're like all so proud of her. And she's like, oh. And it's such a positive thing in our house that every now and again, every now and again she falls down and actually gets hurt, and we're all cheering and we're like, uh-oh. But for the most part, kids fall down when learning to walk. That's where she is. But we know that other children, they freak out because, of course, their families freak out. But let's talk about teenagers. Let's talk about 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. They're not taking their cues from mom and dad anymore. If anything, they're probably taking the opposite from mom and dad. How do you help reassure them when they're not having it?
I might have to disagree with you, Gabe. I think they still take their cues from their parents. And so they still are looking for some guidance here and hope that things are going to be okay. And if they hear their parents freaking out, they will be freaking out. Definitely grab a copy of my book and do all the things we talked about in this first half. Think about if your brain needs to be active, to feel charged up, to feel powerful, to feel like it can do something instead of all the things it can't do, then your teens' brains need the exact same thing. Keep them busy, keep them engaged in something, keep giving them a sense of purpose. It is hard because their motivation is going to be, it's like in the toilet right now, but you have to somehow incentivize them and let them know that it will make them feel better. It's the most important thing you could do. All the things we said, novelty, creativity, sense of purpose, community, every age needs this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jodi. All right, the next question that we have from Michelle Riles. What do you do when you start therapy and you want to get the most out of it, but you have a limited number of visits to help you? Is that in your wheelhouse, Jodi?
Yeah, I don't know. I would say get the most out of it right now. Don't worry about that future. This is what anxiety and alive anxiety. It wants you to worry about something in the future. So you're so busy worrying that it's inadequate that you can't really enjoy it. You might not need it. A lot of times I work with somebody and I see them 3 times for their anxiety and it's eliminated. But people like rearrange and change their health, their health IRA or whatever, because they think it's going to be this huge problem, and it's not. So stay where you are. Stop thinking about something in the future. Handle that later. We are problem solvers. We're adaptable. If it comes to that and you don't have enough visits, there might be a process to getting more if you need it.
Thank you so much, Jodi. The next question we have, unfortunately, I can't pop it up on the screen due to a weird technical glitch. But the question is, you had mentioned that anxiety is this feeling this fear response when there's no fear around. However, what about when you're out in public and somebody is coming close to you and they're not wearing a mask? Now, that fear is justified because you're wearing your mask, they're not wearing theirs, and that's very anxiety inducing. How do you manage that sort of anxiety?
Well, then you're in a situation that you can take some action to keep yourself safe, yes. So usually anxiety, when we're in anxiety, there's no physical danger. right? So when we're having a true fear response, when there is some danger, even if it's mild like that, and we take some action. I'm saying mild. I'm not saying that it's not dangerous to be around someone with a mask. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like you're not in a fire, right?
Right.
There's potential danger there, but it's not imminent right now. But it's still like we need to do something. So our adrenaline goes off in our body and we're like, move away from this person. So you move away from that person. But once you're away from that person, then the anxiety is not necessary anymore. You've taken that action now.
Like it seems, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like a lot of the ways that we can control, cope with, manage anxiety is to empower ourselves to act.
Yes.
Am I getting the hang of it?
Yes, you are, exactly.
Yes. This is a Gabe question. I'm still hung up on if I knew how to act, would I be anxious? And I know that's sort of a nuanced question, but I think to myself that the majority of my anxiety is caused because I don't know what to do. And it's probably because I'm overwhelmed because I have too many options. You know what I mean? Like in the case of the mask, I could leave the store, I could move back, I could wait to go into that area, I could leave entirely and come back at a different time. I could say something to the person. Like, that's an awful lot of choices, and it just seems so overwhelming, so I just panic. That's it. And again, this is Gabe Howard talking, not the question asker. So how do you choose that step one? Because anxiety prevents you from having rational thoughts.
Yeah, sometimes, but sometimes, I don't know if it's that common to do that, to have all those thoughts at once. Because you're already taking, it's a potentially dangerous situation. Your mind thinks of one thing and you're already on it. That's the beauty of adrenaline in the first place. That's the good part of it, not all the bad part that we all feel. But the good part of adrenaline is that it comes to the body before our cognition comes online. So our body is ready to take that action before the cognition. So we're already moving away before we even barely think about it. And maybe later, I'm wondering, Gabe, if it's like after because you're already moving away and it's after the fact, you're like, oh, I could do all this. That's understandable. And that would be something anxiety would do, but it's not necessary anymore.
Is there a lot of anxiety that is like after the fact? I know that I win the majority of my arguments with my wife after the argument is over and I'm laying in bed and I think, oh, I should have said that. But does anxiety do this to us? Like, we're worried about something that is over? Like it's done, it's over, it's wrapped up, and we're still in that moment.
Yeah.
How do we get through that?
Well, I mean, that's kind of like being stuck in the past, or that resentment, or your mind just gets hooked on something. So we either, anxiety is either about something in the future or about something in the past. And then if we keep ourselves in the present, so that's part of a practice that helps us, ground ourselves and get out of our head. It's like, again, get out of your head. Right? So that's either being in your head about something in the past or being in your head going over and over again something in the future. It's our mind being hooked. We just got to get out of there. And so being in the present and training ourselves to be in the present moment is what helps us do that.
Do you have any techniques that you can recommend to get out of our head? I always think of big ones, go to a concert, go to a sporting event, go to lunch, hang out with your friends. But I know that there's there's smaller ones, and one of the ones that I love, like fidget toys. Mm-hmm. Whenever I get stuck in my head, I play with a fidget toy. It's tactile, it's fun. I watch it. I do this game, and I figure how many seconds can I go, and then I try to beat that time. It's all very distracting. Do you have coping skills like that to help people manage anxiety in the moment?
Yeah, do something in the moment. Do a task at hand. So I don't know, clean out a drawer, clean out a closet, take all the dead parts off your plants, listen to a recorded book, like a fiction book, get out of your own head, get into somebody else's story. And while you're listening to that book, walk around your house and dust and clean up and fluff the pillows and do something, right? We could do that right inside the house. We could play a game, we could help somebody, we could reach out, we could clean something, we could make something. Right? We could take something old and refurbish it into something else. We could learn music. There's a million different things. We could just go clean out our desktops of our computers and all in our phone. And, there's just unlimited. There's puzzles. There's tons of events that we can do with people on Zoom. There's tons of communities that we could join and do things with people. We could learn meditation and yoga and movement, exercise. We could go outside and try to go hiking somewhere. I mean, there's just, if you really start to think about all the things you can do, it opens up and you see more and more and more things that you can do.
One of the things that I heard that causes a lot of anxiety is this idea that the thing that we're doing is not valuable. It's not quality time. And I know that, like, before the pandemic, I would say things like, oh, you're playing an online game. That's such a waste of time. Oh, look, Angry Birds on your phone. That's so stupid. And the people around me were like, why are you judging what we do to decompress? And now I find myself thinking, you know, I have this free time. I have this, like, maybe I should play Angry Birds. But that voice in the back of my head comes up and says, that's not quality time. If I'm not mistaken, that is a form of anxiety, right? But how do I get over that? No, I'm wasting my time and I should do something better.
I think there's been a discourse over a long period of time that we have to face our fears. We got to face them, right? So we have to face them. But so what happens to that is that distractions actually get a bad rap. Like distractions, think about human history again. Let's look at the big picture. And throughout all of human history and all the suffering of all these centuries and millennia of human history, distraction is what gets people through these awful times that they're in, right? I mean, entertainment, art, relationships, all these kind of things. We give distraction a bad rap, but it is one of our best coping skills that we have. And so in all of my interviews and I try to counter that message that distraction is a vice in some way, because it's not, we don't have to always face our fears. Sometimes facing our fears just keeps engaging us in the fear. It just gives it all of our attention. And sometimes we don't, sometimes we have to face our fear, and sometimes we have to put something else in our mind and get out of there.
I completely agree. A long time ago, I had some friends that had kids, and they took a parenting class, and they said, did you know that no time that you spend with your child is ever wasted? And now I don't have children, so I thought that's a very odd thing to say. What do you mean that no time that you ever spend with your child is wasted? Like, this was a weird concept to me. And I said, well, everybody thinks that, like, instead of going to the park, you should teach your kid a second language. I'm like, okay, like, or instead of playing video games, you should teach them high-level math, or prepare them for college, or exercise, or teach them skills for life. But in actuality, if you just sit there and watch, you know, Elf or A Charlie Brown Christmas for the 900th time, that's actually incredible quality time that you are spending with your child. Now, I did not know that this was a thing that parents debated, I'll be the first to admit, but it resonated with me, because you're right. I think if I had a kid, I'd be like, no, I have to prepare them to be king of the world. And if they are not king of the world, I have failed. Is it like that, where we're just judging, like we're doing the right thing, but we're just picking on ourselves?
Yeah. And that's what you were doing before also, with thinking about, I can play Angry Birds. That's why number 4 in healing anxiety is self-forgiveness. It's getting rid of those negative self-judgments. They just tear us down. Yeah, we could say negative self-judgments is another word for anxiety even. It is one of the biggest problems that we have. No matter what we feel, we judge it. We just judge it immediately. It's an immediate response. But because we're like, oh my gosh, this is dangerous. We have to figure out the problem. It's that same thing. But if we have compassion for it right away, it dissipates.
You know, Jodi, I love talking to you, because anxiety is just everywhere. I firmly believe that 100% of people will experience anxiety at some point in their life. And I'm shocked at the number of people that I talk to that are like, well, I never have. And I think, how is, either you are the luckiest person I know, or you don't understand what anxiety is. Now, I recognize that anxiety is on a spectrum. I'm not saying that everybody has, you know, panic attacks or anxiety attacks, and I think that that's what gets people in trouble, right? They compare their anxiety to somebody else's. Like, for example, they'll say, well, I haven't had anxiety. I've never had a panic attack and had to hide in a bathroom for an hour like Gabe. I'm like, well, but that doesn't mean that you haven't had anxiety. In the light most favorable, it means you haven't had anxiety as bad as me. Do you think there's just a lot of this like suffering Olympics or comparative anxiety where people are like, well, because somebody's worse, I'm not suffering?
Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate. You know, when I wrote my first book, You Won Anxiety Zero, some family members and friends read it who didn't identify as someone who had anxiety. But when they read it and heard me describe it, they're like, oh, I have anxiety too. I didn't even know it. Not in a bad way, that they were taking on a label, but they might have called it like walls up. You know, people have walls up. But you think of that as something different, but it is an anxiety, really. It's something that you do to protect yourself because you think that you could be vulnerable or in danger, right? So people just call it and see it all different things, and then they feel like they can't relate to other people. But that's their fear too. So if people are judging you because you have anxiety, and I don't even know what that feels like, and that's weird. I don't know why sometimes people have anxiety, just got to get out of their head, and they're saying all that negative stuff. Those are the scares. They're scared themselves. They like, that's so scary to them to think that somebody feels bad, and they're so afraid that they start to judge it. That's what happens. So, you know, I mean, it really, the anxiety is like couched in so many different things. So
it's hidden, right? It's just, it like sneaks up on you and it's like, boom. And before you know what's happening, it can really, really impact your life. And and again, not everybody's anxiety is different, but we've all heard the stories of the person who just, you know, just couldn't do it, and maybe they quit a job, or maybe they quit doing something that they enjoyed. You know, I quit so many things, and when I was younger, and my parents were just like, well, Gabe's a quitter. That was their misunderstanding of what was happening.
lazy.
Yeah, lazy. Yeah. And we learned later that it wasn't that Gabe was a quitter. It's that the anxiety was just so powerful that it was easier to quit because I didn't have any coping skills, or I couldn't get through it. When I learned those skills, well, I'm very resilient, but it took a long time to recognize that. Now, do you believe that everybody can get there? I mean, everybody with anxiety, is it, I know it's not curable, but treatable, manageable. There's no reason to suffer.
Yeah, I think so. I think people who suffer a really long time have come to believe, probably because someone like me, a healthcare provider or mental health care provider, unfortunately told them that it's something that they'll have forever and they just have to manage it. You know, so people that I see who've had anxiety forever, they think that there's no other choice but to keep it. So for me, the biggest message in my programs and my books is trying to help people believe that healing is possible, that you don't have to stay here. That's one thing, is that there's only one guarantee, right? That there's no guarantees, right? Everything changes. So our relationship with anxiety changes. And no matter what you think about anxiety, it doesn't really matter. Like, some people think, I just don't want to, but yeah, anxiety, right? When you were little, you're like, I just don't want to play that sport anymore. But it's not, it's actually anxiety. So once we start to really notice and understand what it is and help people build a robustness, actually blame, you know, all the blame, abuse, abusive power, that's all anxiety. So all the people that are on the feeds, like saying all this negative stuff, those people are so anxious as well. They don't come across that way. They don't think about themselves that way, but they could heal with the same methods that I'm talking about.
Jodi, we're running near the end of time. What messages, like what questions have people not asked? What messages do you want to get out there? What information is the world lacking about anxiety that would allow them to move forward and manage it, and well, just lead a better life? Because that's the goal, right? That's the goal.
Yeah, how we think about our problems is everything. Like, you could dissolve a problem when you don't really fully understand it, but when you misunderstand it, it's a distraction from healing it. And so understanding it and knowing how to think about anxiety makes all of the difference. And when I start to teach how to think about it, everything changes, because everything comes from our beliefs and what we believe. And we didn't even talk about isolation, unfortunately, because that was supposed to be the whole thing. I feel like let me just say one sentence at least. Most mental illness that I see comes from isolation. It comes from a regular human response to a situation, and then a lot of negative self-judgment, which both the feelings of depression and anxiety and the negative self-judgment makes us isolate ourselves. And over time, that isolation leads to more negative self-judgments and more and more and more. And then think about over years, people are stuck and with this huge label that they're different. And I think a lot of times they weren't in the beginning. Oh, I have so much to teach anyway. So.
Well, you can absolutely find Jodi at jodiaman.com. Right there. It's right on the screen right there. You can find her book on amazon.com or her personal website. Your latest book is Anxiety, I'm So Done With You. Yeah, hold it up. Yay. And it's a very cool book. I've known Jodi for a very long time, and I think that she is, of course, very awesome. Jodi, thank you so much for being here. Do you have any final words before we scoot on out? I know I've asked you that like 5 times. Do you have any final words?
I know. I'm Italian, so I love to talk, but I just want people to know they are so much more awesome than they might realize right now. I promise you are so much more awesome. And things don't have to stay this way if you're suffering.
Oh, that's awesome. Jodi, thank you so much. And listen up, everybody. The free virtual NAMIWalks holiday party is December 17th. Santa Claus is going to be there. Musical guest Wanna Beatles. It's free, but the registration link is in the comments section. So please hop over and check it out. You can register right now while we play some groovy music for the next 59 seconds. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.